Take it away.
All right. Hello, I'm Solly Ross, and I'll be your moderator for today. This is the Kubernetes community meeting on February 1st, 2018. A quick reminder, this is being recorded, so don't say anything that you wouldn't want your grandparents to hear. All right, so first up, we have a demo, generator KubeGen from Sergio. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today in this meeting. So I'm going to present this KubeGen configuration tool. First, a quick introduction. I'm Sergio Cisternes. I'm manager for the digital architecture area in Everest. Everest is a Spanish consultancy company, and we are part of the entity data group. And during our experience performing projects lately, what we realized is that we really love Kubernetes, or at least me and my team, we really love Kubernetes, and we are seeing that there's a massive adoption from clients and projects of technology. But we found that at least all the Kubernetes configuration files are tedious. We love the idea to handle all this infrastructure as code, but sometimes when we have to quick create a new service or get rid of these configuration files, we found that we have to do a lot of manual tasks that in the end need some automation. So we start thinking, how can we do automate this? So we have in the end some YAML files that we should write to disk based on some user preferences, and user preferences that we can collect through some sort of questionnaire. So thinking about what the other communities have done with Yeoman, we thought, okay, maybe we can make some tool that in some sort of way can make those questions and put these questions in a JavaScript object and then simply parse it to the XML file. So this is in the end the small idea that is behind KubeGen. So simply create some questions, okay, ask some questions, transform it to an object that matches all the YAML files that Kubernetes needs to deploy something, and simply write it to disk, okay? And I think that the best to do is to have a look how it works. So I'm going to show you right now a very, very simple example. So in the end, okay, you can simply, if you work before with Yeoman, it's as simple as call this new generator, okay? And let's say that we want to create a service that is our blog for KubeGen, okay? And the system starts asking us all the questions that we need to do in order to deploy the service, okay? In which name we want to deploy, okay?
Just a heads up, if you're not speaking, please mute yourself. I see there's a couple people that are currently unmuted, so fix that, please.
Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. It was a bit distracting. So as I was saying, KubeGen starts asking you all the questions it needs to create the files. We want to create a replication controller. I want to create a WordPress. I want to deploy a WordPress image. I want one replica. I want to listen to port 80. I want to listen to port 80. And I want to expose this out of the cluster. Yes, of course, it's a block. So, and I want to expose this as an Nginx proxy. So, and I want to expose this at the hostname blog.kubegen.cccsplat.net. Okay, so when the system have completed all the questionnaire, okay, it simply creates the fields, all the files, with all the structure as Kubernetes expects it, and then you need only to make an apply F, to the folder that is called blog. Okay.
I think we can't see your screen yet right now. We're still seeing your video.
You don't see my screen.
Yep.
Yeah, I think you shared your face window instead of your slides.
Sorry. I want to try to share it again. Sorry. Now.
Okay. Yeah, I think we can see it now.
Yeah, that looks a lot better. Thank you. I think somebody else needs to mute, though. I'm getting a lot more static all of a sudden.
Okay, I'm going to I want to delete. I wanted to do it again so you can see the process again. I think it's interesting. So, where am I? Ref. So, let me do a quick again. All the process. So, okay, I want to create a blog service. Okay, I want to deploy it to the KubeGen namespace. I want a replication controller with the WordPress image. I want one replica listening to port 80, service port 80. I want to expose to the world with an Nginx proxy in blog.kubegen.net and ingress path root, ingress port 80. So it creates all the files, and you only need to do the kubectl apply f block. Okay, so I have already created a wildcard DNS, so we can go right to the browser, and when the service is ready, okay, it's running right now, block 40 seconds, we automatically get everything up and running without having to type a single line of code with a code editor. Okay, we can make some. I want to see, show you the code, what it's actually doing. Sorry, I don't know what happened. Code log. Okay, here we are. Okay, in the end, what the tool is doing is taking all this user input, passing it to an object, and then writing the files. The idea with KubeGen is not to replace all the actual work that you have to do with the configuration files, but help you quick starting and then let you focus on the important things you need to add in the configuration file. So it's a matter of help. Okay, so in the end, help you to get rid of the boilerplate code on this copy paste that we found really painful during our experience. Help you to focus on the important things. Anyway, you need to know what you are doing, and it's not intended, as I was saying, to replace your text editor, but to complement it. Okay. Actually, KubeGen is in a very early stage. It's an idea that we've got during some project experience that we have with our high performance teams in Spain, from Spain, and it was a very, very simple idea that I think that we need some feedback from the community and some help to move this forward and help the community to get rid of this boilerplate code. Okay, KubeGen final comment comes with a big generator and then some sub generators that help you to create only a deployment file or a replication controller. Okay, you have some commands to help you get rid of all the files you need to create during your projects. Okay, and that's all. Thank you.
Awesome. That looks really neat. Do we have any questions about KubeGen?
So this is Joe. So Sergio, very interesting. I'd like to invite you, if you haven't already, to get involved, or anybody else who's interested in this space, with the application definition working group, where we're exploring a lot of these ideas, trying to find commonality about how do you describe applications, what are the common patterns, and how do we start sharing techniques and tools. So yeah, very cool.
Thank you so much.
Is that the right link? I'm sorry, I just tried the link on the right there, and I'm having a little trouble with it.
Sorry. Yeah. Let me check.
It looks like it's generator dash cube gen.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Nope.
My fault. My fault. Sorry, someone. This is the right one. I will fix it before sending you back the presentation. Sorry. Okay. Any questions? The system is really simple.
Yeah, can you paste the correct link in the chat?
The correct link should also be in the meeting notes as well.
Yeah, I'm going to paste it to the chat. Where's the chat now? You can see the chat. Here you are. Here you are. So as I was saying, it's very simple idea. We're not using template at all, but we're only using a JavaScript object that we dynamically fill with the required fields from the Kubernetes configuration file, and then simply pass it through a YAML parser and write to the disk. So if you see the source code, it's really simple.
All right. Unless anybody has any more questions, I think we'll move on to the release updates.
Okay. Thank you so much.
I'm not sure if Jace is here. Yeah, it's Sihar speaking. I'm a feature slate for a 1 to 10 release. Jace asked me to cover this part today for him, since he's absent. So we have several news since the last community meeting last week regarding 1 to 10 release. First of all, we have already completed the feature freeze phase. Feature freeze has successfully been cut on Monday, and today we have 35 features that are targeted release. Find the link to the features tracking spreadsheet in the meeting notes. We also have successfully cut several alphas thanks to Caleb, who did this job for us, and we are also expecting the next alpha in the nearest time. And since the features freeze has successfully passed a few days ago, we already started our marketing activities. We already started the discussion of our marketing planning. We would like to make the marketing strategy for this release much more consistent and successful comparing to the previous releases. So we already started working on that, and thanks to Natasha and Caitlin, who are leading this part for us. That's all from me for now. Any questions regarding 1 to 10 release? Okay, perfect. So you may find notes.
I have one comment.
Yep.
110
Absolutely.
Extraordinary number of issues that have no labels on them. I'm going to be pestering all the SIGs about those, but if people could go in on their own and actually start seeing that things that are in the milestone actually have kind and priority and area, et cetera, labels, that would be really nice.
If I wanted to go try out sorry, I'll turn my video on. Hi, this is Aaron. If I wanted to go try out the latest alpha that was just cut, what would be the best way or place to do that?
Sorry, asking me?
I guess.
Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm muted. Yes. So I'll put the link right there. I can propose you to follow up with Scala regarding that, since he's been cutting the alpha releases for us, and you may find all the detailed information again in them.
Okay, I wasn't sure if there's any like cluster provisioning tool that I could use today.
I'm not sure. That's what we have to figure it out. I'm not sure about that, so I can propose you to follow with us in the SIG release channel, and you may receive more detailed information that I can provide you for now.
KubeADM allows for alpha releases so long as the binaries have been pushed to GCS buckets. So as the repos are updated, you can pull an alpha version and apply, but do it at your own peril.
So you can use KubeADM, right?
Yes, you can. That was been enabled for a long time.
Perfect.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Now on to Graph of the Week.
Okay, hi, it's Aaron again. It keeps signing me in as SIG testing, even though I swear my Zoom window says Aaron Krickenberger. All right, so anyway, I'm here to give you this week's Graph of the Week. Haha, I lied. Actually, it's going to be a table. But it's still DevStats, so it counts, right? This is linked in the meeting notes. It's what's called the developer summary. So I'm going to preface all of this by, we all know like measuring purely metric, like assigning or distilling somebody's value down to a single number is a bad thing, okay? Gaming metrics is not good, right? But there's also this thing like, if you don't measure it, how do you know if you're succeeding at it? And so today I just wanted to take a quick tour of the developer summary, which collects all of the various GitHub events and associates them with each of the GitHub users that created them. So if I look at the GitHub events for 1.9 to now, I don't know how readable this is, so I'm going to just try blowing this up real fast. You can see that Jordan Liggett is the most active GitHub user for the current ongoing release by GitHub events. Now, what are GitHub events? They could be any number of things. So DevStats breaks this down by a variety of different types. Comments, I believe, covers both commit comments, review comments, and issue comments. So this would be somebody who's vocal, who's actively participating in the project, but may not actually be pushing any code. And there again, you can see Jordan Liggett's doing a great job. Stephen, I can't pronounce your last name, I'm so sorry. And then Ben the Elder from SIG Testing. If I take a look at review comments specifically, because we all know like reviewing is really the best way to get code forward, right? The funnel sort of like people who push the code, people who review the code, people who actually get it committed. Again, Jordan, great job, and STTTS. Thank you guys. So these are the people that I would definitely want to pat on the back because they're doing a great job of reviewing pull requests. Unfortunately, this isn't broken down by repository, so I can't tell you like which repos these are happening against specifically. I know that a lot of the SIG testing folks have pretty large commits because we do a lot of fast, frequent commits into the testing for repo, especially when it comes to changing jobs. So if I wanted to take a look at who has submitted the most pull requests to all of the Kubernetes projects in the past, during the current release cycle, it's me. Honestly, this is the entire reason I wanted to show you this graph. It's just a humble brag about it. But also you can see that the top 2 and top 3 are folks from SIG testing. So we do a lot of frequent pull requests. Doesn't necessarily mean we're generating a lot of code that contributes directly to Kubernetes. So these are definitely active participants in the project, but I'm also using this as an example to point that this doesn't necessarily mean you're getting huge substantive contributions. The majority of my pull requests, for example, were to change basically either the word from reviewers to approvers or to update the code of conduct across every single one of our repositories. And so the way you could see that, for example, is looking at the active repositories event. So that just shows who has touched how many different repositories or forks. I forget what the threshold for this is. And again, you can see I've touched all 83 repos that are part of the Kubernetes project. So I encourage you to use this to go humble brag to your own teammates, or maybe to create a wall of shame or something. I don't know. This range allows you to view by releases, so you could maybe sort of dig through by hand and sort of compare how things have changed across releases. Or you could take a look at things in sort of the last quarter, week, month, decade. Boy, I hope we get to that point. Anyway, that has been this week's Graph of the Week. Thank you. Any questions?
Looks like we have a question from chat. Doug asks, does it include incubator repositories as well?
Yes, DevStats includes all repositories in the GitHub organizations: Kubernetes, Kubernetes Incubator, Kubernetes Helm, and Kubernetes Client. All right, back to you, Sully.
Right. I think what we really want to know is, why are there two Tim Hawkins? All right. On to
because Tim is just that awesome.
I mean, that is true. On to SIG updates. Looks like first we have SIG Cluster Ops with Rob Hirschfield.
Hey everybody. Boy, it's been a while since we've given an update. First thing is that there is a new time for SIG Cluster Ops. So we moved the meetings up an hour earlier to try and accommodate European schedules a little bit. And the second major one is we've been trying to figure out SIG working group, what we're doing. SIG Cluster Ops is not a code committing SIG, so our goal is not to be writing code. Our goal is to be creating a place where operators can come together and talk about operating Kubernetes and improving the operations experience, but not specifically writing code to do that. And so we're looking to change to a more meetup style SIG. And so I haven't yet tried to engage the committee on this. It didn't feel to us like we were exactly a working group, and we're not exactly a SIG because we're not responsible for a code commit place. And if we were going to do docs, we would participate in the docs SIG from that perspective. So we're switching the format to be more meetup style, and we'd like to invite people who are interested in talking about Kubernetes operations to share their experiences, talk about what works, what's not working, what they're trying to do as a meetup. So a lot of sharing. We're very conversational in our meetups. We do want to have schedules, so if it's helpful for everybody if you can say, I'd like to have the mic today and talk for a little while about what's going on. So we've been doing this already in our SIGs, but more formally announce it, and I need to do a blog post for the community and explain some of how things are going on. Along those lines, that means we definitely want to do demos. We're very welcoming for demos. So if you felt like 10 minutes was too short in the community session and you had a demo that you think would be more interesting, if you could do a 30-minute or a 40-minute review and get some specific feedback, especially about the operational components of it, that is a great topic for Cluster Ops. You are welcome to join us there. Once again, we are focused more on the operational side, not the developer side. And we're still doing our thing, having meetups, talking about issues. We are, and we'd like to go back through another deployer round. So that, if you were maintaining a Kubernetes deployment pattern, we would love to see a demo, talk to you about it, figure out what you're doing, see if there's commonalities with other things in the community so that we can continue to improve that as a group. Good. Solly, thank you for adding notes. And that is the SIG update for Cluster Ops. And our next meeting of the week, we are bi-weekly, is you get a break for an hour, and then we're meeting in 1 hour.
And you said, Rob, the meeting's bi-weekly, so every 2 weeks?
Exactly. It's bi-weekly. And then we have a bit.ly link that I'll put in the notes. It's just bit.ly K8's Clops. I'll throw that at the top.
Got it. Rob, I'll send you a note. Thanks.
Excellent. Yeah, we'd love to see more demos, right? We'd love demos.
Great. Awesome. Thank you, Rob. Anybody have any questions for Rob? And then we'll move on to SIG auto scaling after that. All right. On to more of me. On behalf of SIG auto scaling, this is our update. Work continues on the vertical pod autoscaler. You can follow it at the Kubernetes/autoscaler repository. So the official proposal was merged and accepted, and so work is well underway on that. We are currently investigating a couple of minor additions to HPA version 2 to improve flexibility with regards to standalone or kind of unassociated metrics before we graduate. So we're investigating whether we want to make changes to those. So we may do another beta there. And we're also continuing to get feedback on the metrics APIs, adapters, and how easy or difficult it is to integrate them with HPA, trying to get real user feedback. So if you have that, we would encourage you to either join us in our meetings or hop on #SIG autoscaling and rant angrily at us. I'll drop a link to our meeting information in the meeting notes. Any questions? All right, sounds like we don't have any questions. So we'll move on to announcements. Looks like first up we have...
Quick, can I ask a question before we move on?
Sure, go ahead.
SIG related. Hey, yeah, so this is Bob Wise. So SIG scalability, one of the things we've been working on is trying to revise our charter, and the question came up at the meeting what we need to do. I'm asking this question because it may be of interest across SIGs generally. What do we need to do? Is there steering committee sign off, or is there some other process we need to follow in order to finalize changes to SIG charters?
I will get to that.
Very good then. Moving along, thank you.
Okay, so hi, I'm Aaron Krickenberger. I'm taking off my SIG testing hat. I'm taking off my Graph of the Week hat. I'm putting on my steering committee hat. Welcome. We're going to try and make sure that, as you may know, the steering committee meets on a bi-weekly basis. That tends to be when a lot of decisions actually happen or we have some stuff to report. So we're going to try and carry that forward to reporting here to the community on a bi-weekly basis so you know kind of what's going on. Although I will take this time to remind you that we do publicly record our meetings and they are available on YouTube, and our meeting notes are also public. So today I wanted to talk to you about the concept of formalizing sub-projects. So I'm going to share my screen again real quickly. All of these links are available in the meeting notes as well. And I plan on, wow, why is the window down there? Cool. And I plan on having a thread out to Kubernetes dev a little bit later. So this work is based off of a proposal that was started in SIG architecture back in November 30th. And so the idea is a sub-project is we want to try and align the ownership structure with the code structure that we have today. We'd like to get that defined in kind of a machine consumable form so that our automation can help improve things for us rather than increase the amount of friction we have here. Questions we're looking to answer are like, who's the decision maker for whether or not this piece of code is going to go into this thing. And today we've loosely implemented that with like owners files. So you have approvers and reviewers. But in our community membership ladder, we have the idea of, owners who like actually own the code and kind of the buck stops with them. And so owners typically are people who have substantive project knowledge in specific areas. And so we're calling these specific areas sub-projects, right? So we think that, for example, a sub-project is probably either a single repo or a collection of multiple subdirectories. The idea being that SIG apps would be a great example today, where SIG apps already has like the charts sub-project, which would be defined by the charts repo. And they have an ongoing weekly meeting to discuss the care and feeding of charts and best practices. There's also the Helm sub-project. And today that I think is defined as the owner's file that sits inside of the Helm repository. Now these subprojects can have like their own leads completely independent of the SIG leads. These are the people who are responsible for operating in that corner of the world and maybe following more specific conventions than are appropriate for the entirety of the project as a whole. The other kind of subproject would be the workloads API. So that's an example of a subproject that spans multiple subdirectories within the Kubernetes repository. That's the API that's responsible for daemon sets, replica sets, so on and so forth. So I encourage you to take a look at this issue for more feedback on sort of the goals of why we're trying to call these things subprojects and why we're trying to make sure that they're aligned to SIGs so that ultimately every piece of code within the Kubernetes project is owned by somebody. And it seems ideal to hierarchically have that go up to SIGs, since SIGs are sort of the easiest place for us to fan out communication and ensure that there's more than a single point of failure. I've put together an initial implementation of what subprojects might look like based on the idea that as we look to iterate around what is the correct list of subprojects and what is the correct mapping of subproject to SIG, that we do that work in one single location. I think ultimately the idea here is, since I've been talking about owners files, we'd like subprojects to be defined by owners files across a variety of repositories, and we'd love those repositories to be the source of truth and have that fed back up into one location, thanks to the wonders of automation. But before we go ahead and implement that automation, we want to make sure that we're on the right path here, and we want to make sure that in the interim, we have the content sort of correct for us as humans to consume. So it made sense to add fields to the sigs.yaml file that some of you may be aware of. It's sort of like our database in YAML form for all things SIG related. If you're updating SIG meeting times, SIG meeting agendas, you're updating SIG leads, whatever, you're updating this file and then you're running make and it generates a bunch of readmes, which is loosely speaking what I've done here. And I just took like a total pass at assigning at least all of the repositories to a SIG. So you can see, for example, here, I'll close that, do that in a new window, and I would do SIG apps as well. So API machinery would be an example of, we probably don't need all of these single repos, each being their own subproject, and it would be great to start a conversation about which of these repos maybe belong under one subproject. Like maybe there's one subproject called Kubernetes clients that has all of the Kubernetes client repos. Further, you'll notice if I'm clicking through on some of these that not all of the repos actually have owners. So the next step would be to go through and make sure that all of the repos do actually have excuse me, owners files that correspond to the people who currently have write or admin access to those repos. An example of a SIG that does have subprojects would be SIG apps. So you can see here that there's a regular SIG meeting, and if I look down in subprojects, I see that there's a charts subproject. This does actually have an owners file. And there's a meeting for charts that happens Tuesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific, and you can go take a look at their meeting agenda. Same thing for Helm. So the idea here was to sort of start floating this idea by through a wider community and roll this out in a fashion that is not voluntolding people what they own, but instead to make sure we have a solid proof of concept that we can iterate on. I'm certainly open to feedback here, but my suggestion would be that I ask and encourage SIG leads to take a look at this pull request just to sanity check it, that we ensure that it is treated as non-binding, and that we acknowledge that we're going to iterate on this for a little while. And we'll have further discussion down the line about like deadlines by which we're going to consider these lists authoritative, deadlines by which we're going to make sure we have all the subprojects, so on and so forth. Any quick feedback?
Question. If I have a brand new subproject that we want a repo for, who decides whether or not that belongs in Kubernetes?
Awesome. It's almost like you're reading ahead in my agenda.
Okay.
You and Bob. So I will answer that real quickly, but before I do, are there any other questions? Okay. SIG leads, I linked to that pull request in the meeting notes. I will be sending out an email to Kubernetes dev later today. Please take a look. I would like to have this initial implementation merged early next week. I'll put an actual date to that. Okay, so other things upcoming from the steering committee. We'll start with Josh's question since I believe that was next on my thing. Brendan Burns has been working on what we have been calling the repositories proposal, which I think we used to sort of call the incubator problem. And we've slowly been trying to pick apart like how we don't boil the ocean here. So we're roughly coalescing to the concept of 3 different tiers or classes of repositories. I say classes in the sense of like, what's the formalism around them, how much process is involved, how much consistency is expected. This will all be spelled out in a doc, so I'm going to sort of ramble off the top of my head, but I would really encourage you to look forward to a doc coming from the steering committee and encourage you to comment on that doc if things seem out of whack. The loose concept is there are the core Kubernetes repos. These are the things that make up Kubernetes. In some sense, you could think of it as everything that's inside of Kubernetes, but things have started to move out of Kubernetes, and so it would include those things. It's loosely today everything in the Kubernetes org. That definition may not completely hold true cognitively, but from a technical sense, that's sort of what it is. And we're going to move to the expectation that things have a certain level of process around there as far as making sure that there's good stewardship, that we don't have bit rot, that there's adequate levels of testing, that the consistency is followed in terms of process, automation, things like that. If you take a step up, there's, I think, what we're calling SIG repos. Then the idea there is we want to empower SIGs to be able to create repos as they see fit, whether that's they just need a vendor neutral place to experiment on some stuff, or they want to start a project as a sub-project of that SIG, but they're not really ready to go whole hog and do it directly in core. In fact, if anything, it's probably not a great idea to attempt to have anything start anything directly in core, because the idea is if you are a Kubernetes repo, there's some level of maturity that has already been established. So you're likely doing your proofs of concept, your experiments, but you're also maybe doing your additional tools that, for whatever reason, like your SIG thinks they're super stable and they're super usable, but they're not part of core, but their presence in an organization that has the word incubator in them really seems to be holding back adoption, right? So what if we had a single org named Kubernetes SIGs? We set up a good lightweight process for anybody to create their repos, so on and so forth. So Josh, to answer your question, you would go talk to the SIG you want to create the sub-project under, they create the repo under Kubernetes SIGs. There'd be slightly less process formalism under that. 3rd tier, associated repos. Basically, I think just make sure you have the CLA bot turned on for your repo and no real presence in any Kubernetes org required. Joe, you have your hand up about that.
Code of conduct also.
Oh, yes, and code of conduct. So, but like I said, if I get the details wrong here, trust the doc. Don't trust me rambling off the top of my head. Okay, other upcoming thing. So SIG charters, look to see sort of like the nerdy analogy here is look for the interface and then reference implementations of SIG charters, right? So what are the SIGs expected to provide? How are they? What are the SIGs expected to provide? Looking for that in sort of the form of a checklist or something. And then we're going to provide some really well thought out example templates that you could use for your charter today. However, if you would prefer to jump the gun and just get your charter in, I think you as a SIG are free to discuss amongst your SIG leads and get that charter in. And if it needs to be revised to update those checkboxes, it can be revised down the line. We'll start talking about, deadlines by which a formal policy has to go in and what the enforcement mechanism is to make sure that things are checked off. But as usual with the steering committee, we don't want to do a top-down approach for the most part. And it could be that there are some SIGs for whom a strict set of requirements don't necessarily make sense. We're open to an exception process rather than a top-down mandate. But again, look for that coming up. In the short term, I know I got pinged and somebody else on the steering committee got pinged on your SIG charter, Bob, for SIG scalability, and I'm happy to review that.
Aaron, just 2-minute warning.
Can you clarify? Sorry. Aaron, can you clarify whether, assuming the SIG has gone through and matched the template and checked all the boxes, is there still a step where the steering committee approves the charter, or is
I'm deferring that answer until later. Just know that we will have an answer, but I don't have the answer today.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and that is all that I have. Oh, and we're working to graduate Kubernetes as a project formally through the CNCF, thus making us the first CNCF project to graduate. That is all that I have. Back to you, Solly.
All right, awesome. And now on to a plethora of updates. Plethora is a great word. So first we have the Amazon participation update from Bob Wise.
Hi there. So let me start by saying that I think the tone. Well, maybe for those of you who I've been around the project a long time, but maybe I should start with that. So I've been involved with Kubernetes since before 1.0, which is getting to be a lot of Kubernetes dog years at this point. And I am now at Amazon as the GM for open source container services, which is primarily responsible for EKS, which is our hosted Kubernetes service. I think the tone I really wanted to set for us, you're going to see a lot more involvement from us, but was to be measured more on what we do and less on what we say. So I had not actually asked to do the presentation, but I gotten some feedback from the community managers that there was enough kind of curiosity that it would probably be a good idea. So doing this just by way of showing everybody that we have a team here. We're working on Kubernetes. The conference room that you see here is in Seattle. And I thought it probably would be worthwhile just to say a couple of things along this line. So one is that we are still ramping up our involvement directly in the project, and I would ask for some patience as we grow out the team to do that. In the short run, the places you would probably should expect us to see start showing up and making a more solid contribution are around testing. Really important for us to support the project in running on Kubernetes should be awesome on AWS. Let me say that isn't, when I say that, don't interpret that as EKS should be awesome, which is also true, but we really want to help the entire community of users on AWS have a great experience with Kubernetes, whether you're using our hosted service or not. So that's one area that we think is really important. And as you might expect, you should start to see us. In fact, we have been showing up and starting to contribute more with SIG AWS. Seems kind of like the natural place for us to show up. So if you're looking for folks on the service team, including me, SIG AWS would be a great place to go. And there again, we're very dedicated to the notion that SIG AWS should be a place that is a useful, welcoming place for anyone that's running Kubernetes on AWS, however it is they're doing that. We're going to spend some more time on documentation and other things. One thing that I want to make sure everybody knows is that I'm around, I'm on Slack, I'm available. The team here is starting to show up in the community. Like, feel free to reach out to any of us. Feel free to reach out to me. We'd love feedback, ideas, especially as a team, we're a little bit newer to the community. We need as much kind of help and guidance and advice as we can get, and we'd love to have it. I think just to emphasize one point, although we made a bunch of statements in public about this, but I'll just emphasize here that we are very dedicated to an upstream experience. We're not going to be forking. We're going to be engaged with the community. If there's things that we feel are important, we're really going to try to work through the community to get those upstreamed. So I don't know. Any questions? I'd be happy to answer a few.
We're actually running a bit low on time, so if we have any extra time, we'll get back to that. But I think for the moment,
Thanks. I just wanted to say thanks very much for the opportunity to say hi. So.
All right. So, very welcome. So on to SIG testing. And if I raise my hand like this, that means you have like 1 or 2 minutes left.
Okay, I guess I'll go since Tim, are you there? No. All right, to make it real quick, SIG Testing has set up a new sub-project. It's called the Testing Commons. If you care about how the tests are written and what they are actually testing, if you are interested in contributing more tests, if you are interested in cleaning up the existing tests, if you are interested in fixing the flaky tests, please come to the Testing Commons meeting. It meets bi-weekly Wednesdays at 7 a.m. Pacific.
7:30. 7:30 Pacific time. And this was sprung out from a bunch of other SIGs who are starting to shift repositories. So if you are in the process of shifting repositories and you want a common location for putting your infrastructure for testing, as well as the conversation that's ongoing with regards to conformance, we're also interested in that area. So we have a lot of common ground with how the tests are written and commonality in the infrastructure for running the tests, not the actual infrastructure inside of the environment, but the code infrastructure. So,
yeah, if I say the words test E2E framework, and that means something to you, or if you've struggled with a variety of command line flags and environment variables when attempting to run your tests, Testing Commons is probably the place for you. Okay, Solly, back to you.
Awesome. Always good to have more effort in those areas. All right. Kubernetes documentation user stories MVP.
All right. Hi, I'm Andrew Chen. I'm part of SIG Docs. I'm going to show like a really quick demo of our MVP that we launched on Tuesday. But before that, I just want to thank the team that worked on this, because this really was a community effort. There's Jennifer Rondeau and Jessica Yao from Heptio. We have Joe Heck, Luke Hideka, and then Alex Contini, who is our graphic designer from the Linux Foundation, and Steve Perry. So let me share my screen. Let's see. All right. Let me know if you can see this now.
Yep, it looks good.
Cool. So we replaced the Docs homepage with sort of a new landing page that incorporates personas. So if you see, we have like these buckets like users and contributors. And under users, you can, if you're an application developer, you can just coming in, you can say, oh, I want to learn kind of the foundational stuff. And there is a content page that goes over the specifics of, setting up kind of a development environment, and then like the initial things like developing an application and so forth. So this should kind of streamline the onboarding process for, specific personas so that they know like, what they should focus on. And for cluster operator, there's a similar thing. And then there's different levels. So like after you know the foundational things, like you can, what are the things I would normally work with? And so we have it, broke it down so you can, see quickly, like, and with links to the documentation, what you should be aware of and fluent with. And then if you don't like this and you want to just, continue to browse the docs that you like how you did before, you can click on the Browse Docs button, and it'll show you kind of a high level overview of all the different sections. So if you want to just like go directly to install tools, you can do that. So this is an MVP. So that means, we're still going to add things later. So we would really appreciate any feedback you have on, the usability, if it's, helping like onboarding people faster, what we could add, what we can, improve, what you like about it. And then you can either send that, ping us on the Slack channel for SIG Docs, or you can open an issue on the in the repo.
Suppose I wanted to contribute something directly. Could I? Is there a good place to do that?
Yes. So I mean, it would be the same as like contributing, to SIG Docs, right? You can join our meeting and we can give you some guidance on like how to, where to make the changes and things like that. But it would be just the same as contributing any other kind of documentation.
Awesome. All right. That looks really, really great. All right. We have a SIG Arch announcement from Joe Beta.
Hello, everybody. I'll be quick, hopefully. So there's been some concerns, and we saw this heat up again coming out of some of the website stuff about the use of the term master to refer to the control plane nodes, and with this being insensitive and really having some really bad connotations for folks. So we talked about this at the steering committee and decided that, you know, it's probably a SIG architecture thing because this is about naming pieces of our architecture. And the upshot out of that, and I'll summarize the thinking here. There's an issue that I'm putting in the, it's in the notes and it's in the chat here. The thinking is, number one, master is not a great term to actually describe what's actually going on. The Kubernetes control plane is distributed, and anytime where you're referring to master, there's a certain laziness there, and we should probably find ways to be more precise about it. It has this connotation of being sort of a single thing that can live or fail, and the reality is that sometimes folks run in that mode, but you know, especially for HA or production ready environments, the control plane will be split off across multiple nodes. So it's not a great technical term for what we're doing. And then obviously there's you know, sensitivities around the historical connotations. Now, in the computer science literature, this is a common name, and so, you know, we don't want to, like, I don't think there's any ill intent coming up here, but like I think, you know, the connotations are what they are, and so we have to be sensitive to that and make sure that that we don't try and sort of fight and hold on to something for silly reasons. That being said, I don't think this is, anybody sees this as a fire drill type of thing of like, let's rip out a bunch of code or let's rip out a bunch of documentation over the next release or something like this, but more along the lines of, let's pick better terminology and agree on that as a community. Let's try and start using that in our day-to-day sort of how we talk about things, and then make sure that we don't make the problem worse. So as we see stuff, as we update stuff, try and correct for this and you know, create the right incentives so that we switch to this new terminology over time. And there's obviously parallels to when we, you know, this is historic, like ancient history right now for Kubernetes, but nodes used to be called minions. Now they're called nodes. It took, I don't know, something like, you know, 2 years to actually complete all of that. So the proposed terminology would be, if you're talking about the control plane as a whole, is control plane. And if you're talking about something more specific, just use the specific term about that. So nothing totally like locked down there. I'd love to hear some comments. Come to me offline, or go ahead and put some stuff in that issue there. But this is what we're proposing, and I'm hoping that nobody sees it as hugely intrusive, and that this is a good path forward. So we're short on time, so I don't want to belabor things. Trying to be quick. Any quick comments, concerns? No, I see some good stuff in the chat, so that's good. Yeah.
All right. Looks like we have, coming up towards the end here, contributor summit for KubeCon EU information.
Yeah, this is myself in Paris. The KubeCon contributor summit for EU, it will be on May 1st of 2018. We wanted to make sure that we got an announcement there. There's a link to the pull request with the information on the formatting and everything like that. None of that is finalized, but I wanted to get the date out as fast as possible so that people can start planning around their travel. And the second bit, we've created a hash shoutouts channel in Slack. It's just a fun thing where if someone has done something really great in the community and you see it, you want to give them a shout out, mention it in there, what they've done. And what we'll do is at the very end of this meeting, we'll just say, hey, the following people got thanks from the community this week. Great job, everyone, to kind of help socialize the people that might not be participating in this meeting, but are, you know, day after day helping people in Slack and so forth. So that's all I have. Thank you. Or any questions?
Sounds like a neat idea. All right, we have 6 more minutes, so if anybody has any last-minute announcements they'd like to make, questions about any of the announcements that we just had that we kind of saved till the end, feel free to let them be known now.
I'll just say it again. Thank you, Jordan Liggett, for reviewing so many PRs. That's super awesome. Please, more people review more PRs. Dethrone him. If you actually click through release by release, the dude's been at the top of the reviews for almost every single release for the past year. So go for it. That's a good metric worth gaming.
All right. With that, it looks like we can give everybody back 5 minutes of their day. See you next week.